You can trigger workflows and automations directly from Airtable with a button. I'll show you how to set this up using both Relay.app and Make.com. Check it out. Welcome back. I'm Zack from InnerDev Solutions. We help businesses streamline their processes using custom no-code tools so you can focus on what matters most. To learn more, you can visit our website, InnerDevSolutions.com, or use the link in the description below. There's a few tools that you'll need to get started. If you don't have accounts already for any of these, there's links in the description below to get set up for free. That's Airtable, Relay, and Make. Once you have accounts for all of those, let's go into Airtable to get started. And you can create a new base and create a new table. If you already have an Airtable base set up that you want to add a webhook or a button automation to, go ahead and navigate to that base or workspace, and then go into the table that you want to trigger the automation from. The purpose of this video is going to show you how to use webhooks, and we're going to connect those webhooks to buttons on either the database side of Airtable. Right in here, there is a button field type, but within the interfaces as well, we can add a button that connects the webhook within the database that will trigger that workflow and automation. And there's multiple settings that we're going to go through. Let's get into the actual use case of the automation is going to be really simple. It's more so the settings of adding the trigger and the webhook response and a few other additional pieces that we're going to focus on here today. If you're looking for a more advanced workflow or a more advanced automation setup, this probably will not be the video, but this will show you how to use buttons, webhooks, webhook responses, and those types of settings. Let's get into it. First thing that we're going to do is I'm just going to add a test record to get us started. And I'm just going to call this test company or something along those lines. It doesn't really matter. And I'm also just going to add an email address. Now, the automation that we're going to do, we're just simply going to create a customer in QuickBooks when we click the button. That's all we're going to do. So I'm just going to leave this blank for now. But basically what's going to happen when we click that button, it's going to grab data, and more than likely, if you're going to add a customer in QuickBooks or an accounting software, you're going to have a lot more information than this, but this will be enough to get started. The rest of the process will be exactly the same. When we click that button, we're going to create the record in QuickBooks, and then we're going to update the information, which is just a QuickBooks ID, back in Airtable. As I mentioned off the top, we're going to build this in both Relay and Make. I can show you the differences in using the webhooks in those two tools. And there's going to be something called webhook response that we're going to use as well. And there's a few different functionalities and pieces that we can add in using that, such as navigating to the new customer record in QuickBooks. Let's imagine that you're also creating an invoice. We could navigate directly to the invoice. Or if you use PandaDoc, we could navigate directly to the contract or document. There's all sorts of different use cases. You can also just close the window automatically. There is just a lot of different things that you can use the webhook response for, and I'll show you how to set those up in both Relay and in Make. Now that we have our table set up, the next thing that we need to do is we are going to add a formula field. And for now, I'm just going to add empty quotes just as a placeholder, and I'm just going to call this webhook URL. Difference between the Relay and the Make webhooks: each automation, scenario, workflow, whatever you're going to call it, depending on the tool, it's going to have its own unique webhook URL. And you'll see what that looks like here in a moment. This one's just going to be webhook URL-relay. And then just drag this out so we can see the whole thing. I will right click on it and duplicate the field. And I'm just going to relabel this one to Make. Now that we have these in place, we can now navigate to Relay. I'm going to build this whole thing out using Relay, and then I'm going to quickly show you how to do the same thing in Make.com. But once you have the base or the core of it figured out in Relay, it's going to translate quite similarly to Make, but it won't be exactly the same, and you'll see what I mean here in a moment. Now that we have Airtable set up, we can go into Relay, again, link in the description below, and we can create a new workflow. I'm just going to call this webhook from Airtable button, and click out of this, and we can now add our trigger. So on the right side, we have a lot of different triggers. We can see there's mailhook, webhook, and so I can just click into it, or you could search, but I'll just click into webhook. And we'll leave this as the post HTTP method because we are posting some data to the webhook. And here is the unique URL for this workflow. First thing that we're going to do is we're going to set up this URL webhook back in Airtable. So if I click this icon, we're going to copy this unique URL to our clipboard. Now we can go into Airtable, go to the formula field, and I'll just double click on it. And inside the quotes, I'm going to paste that URL. Now at the end of the URL, to pass in a variable or information to this webhook via a URL parameter, I'm going to, at the very end of the URL, add in a question mark. And then I'm just going to type in record, and you can label this literally anything that you want. But what we're going to do is we're just going to pass in the record ID from Airtable to this webhook. You could also, if you wanted, add the customer name and email, but I'm just going to simply add in the record. We've got question mark, record equals, and on the outside of the quote, we'll add in the and symbol. And if I just start typing in record, we can see this record ID function. And all that's going to do, if I hit save, and if I scroll us all the way across, we can see at the very end, we have our unique URL followed by a question mark, record, equal sign, and then it's just appending or concatenating the record ID that's unique to this specific record. So if I click plus here, we can see this is a different record ID at the end of this. So now when I click this URL, once I activate it in Relay, it's going to call that webhook and it's going to pass this record ID to that URL or to that webhook. What I can do here is go back into Relay. We have the HTTP method, that's post, that's fine. Now I can click configure automatically. It's going to listen, and I'm going to go in here, click it, and it's just going to make a test call, and it's going to automatically determine that we are passing this record variable to it. And I can hit save. And now this will allow us to set up the first step. So I can just hit done. I'll click add step, and this is going to be an Airtable step. And we are going to find a record. And then once we're in the find record step, we need to find this Airtable base in this table right here. Now that I've found the table, the records to return, I only want one single record. Add this filter here. Based off of the filter, I know I need to get the record ID. So I need to actually go back into Airtable. I'm just going to make that back to a reasonable size. Hit this plus icon. We'll bring in a formula field and we'll just call this record ID. And I'll just add in the record ID function right in line. We can create this. And now if I go back into Relay, I click this add filter. And if I click this button here, we're just going to check for new fields. Now that we have the action step of the find customer in Airtable set up. So again, this is the table here. We're looking at the customers. We just want to return a single record. And to identify the record, we're going to make sure that the record ID is exactly the record ID passed from the webhook. So now we can go on to QuickBooks or whatever other application that you're using. So in our case, we're creating a customer in QuickBooks, but go to your tool, connect it to Relay, and we can set up the next step here. We're going to go create customer, and I've already got my Relay account connected to QuickBooks. So we can add a field, and we're just going to add in the display name from the record ID or from the record that we just found. We're going to pass in the customer name. And that is all we're going to do with this step. Now, the next step, we're actually going to use the webhook response. We're going to go in here, type in webhook, and we will use the respond to webhook. And there's a few options that we have. We're going to respond to this webhook call. And if we click this respond with, we can see a few options here. We have a redirect to URL, and that's what we're going to use first. I'm going to select that redirect to URL. I'm just going to pass in the customer URL, and we'll just leave that as continue the run. And the last thing we're going to do is actually update the record in Airtable, select the record, add the field of QuickBooks ID, And from the create customer step, which is step 3, we'll go in and pass in the customer ID, hit done, publish this, and I will enable that. Now that this is good to go, we can go in to Airtable and we can give this a shot and see what happens. If I click this link, calls the webhook, and within a few seconds, we should see this process. And we can see it has successfully created the customer for us and redirected to the customer record within QuickBooks. And if we go back into Airtable, it's now passed in the ID as well. Now, within Relay, there's something else that we can do. We can disable this and go into the respond to webhook. And what we're actually going to do is we're going to change this up a little bit. We're going to go to custom. We're going to change this to text/HTML. And here we can add in a custom landing page. That's basically what it is. When you click that URL, it opens up a new tab. We can just use some HTML and display additional information. In our case, we can keep it really simple, but you can really do whatever you want. And you can create that HTML using an LLM or some sort of AI model. But basically, in this case, what we want to do is just display a success page, and we can add in a link that redirects to the customer record as well in QuickBooks instead of just redirecting it to it automatically. That's up to you how you want to handle that, but I'm just going to drop in the HTML that I've already put together here. Now that I've got the content type as text/HTML, I can go configure it manually and just paste this string. I'll hit save, and basically what it looks like is this on the right side here. So you can change the text to say whatever you want. In our case, what it would say is customer created successfully, and we can add this button here as well. It would redirect, if we clicked it, to that customer record. And the way you do that in Relay is now that we have pasted in the text, if I click into it, scroll down to the bottom on this A space H reference or ref tag in between the quotes, we would just paste in that same customer URL that we used in the redirect. But I'm not going to worry about it right now. I'll just hit publish and we can navigate back into Airtable. I'll just create a new record and I will click this link here. I want to make sure that I've hit done, turn this on, and I'll go back into Airtable. And we can see it's navigated us to or displayed this landing page that we have created. Now we can accomplish the same thing in make.com. I'm not going to build out the whole workflow. I'm just going to show you how to use the webhook and the webhook response. We'll go into make. We'll click the plus icon on the module, select webhooks, and select this custom webhook. We can add a webhook, and we're going to create a new unique webhook URL. We'll just call this Airtable demo. I'll hit save, and I will click this copy URL to the clipboard. And now we can go back into Airtable, and in this field here, we'll paste it in similar to what we did. Relay, question mark, type in record, equal sign, and then we'll use the and symbol, and we'll just type in the record ID, hit save, and we can give this a test run now. If I right click on it, we'll run this module only. I'll click this link. We can see it's been accepted, and we can see it's passed in the key record with the value here. Now, like I said, instead of creating a new QuickBooks record, I am just going to do the response. We'll hit webhook response, and we have a few options. There is an option to just automatically close the window. You can use JavaScript for that. Just do a quick Google search or ChatGPT, and it will create the proper script here for you. You can also use this HTML similar to what we did in Relay. So again, use ChatGPT or an LLM of some sort to create this HTML. And then if I just hit save, I want to make sure I've got this set up correctly. I hit save here. I'll run this once. Back in Airtable, if I click the link, it opens up this page. The other option we have is to use a 307, which is a redirect code. And I can clear out the body. I'll select this show advanced settings, custom headers, and I'll just type in location. Make sure you use a capital L. And then here you can just add in the URL that you want to navigate to. If I hit save, what it would actually look like is we'd have additional modules in between here. Same thing that we've been doing if we're creating a customer in QuickBooks. we'd have our create customer module, and then the output or the response that it provides would have the URL, and you could just add in that customer URL right here. I'll just have it navigate to Google just as an example. Now, when I run this, I'll hit save, run once, and if I select this, it should redirect us to Google. And it looks like I have made a mistake somewhere. Let's try this again. I'll make sure I include an additional slash, so it needs to say https:/. Now let's give this a shot. Run once, and it has worked successfully. It's redirected us to Google as expected. Now, the last thing I want to do is link these URLs to a button. Within the data tab, we can just search for the button field type, label it whatever you want. This can just be called create customer. You can change the style, and then we can link this to the Relay webhook URL, whatever one you want. So now if I hit create field, if I click this button, it will do the same thing as clicking this URL. Now within the interfaces, this is most likely where you're going to deliver the button for the user or the end user to be able to complete this workflow. If we create a new interface, it doesn't really matter which one, the process will be the same. I will just click through this, have the interface set up, and what we're going to do is add a button. So I'm going to select the page, go down here to the buttons, add a button, click this cog icon, and then we'll go up to the action, and we're going to scroll down to go to URL in record, which is one of the URLs we've just created. And then here's the field we want it to point to. We'll hit that drop down. I'm just going to search the Relay one that we created, the webhook URL. You can change the color if you want, and you can change the label of the button. We'll just call this create customer, hit enter. And now what it will look like, depending on the record that you've selected, when you click this button, it would create a customer in QuickBooks for us. I'll show you what that looks like. I'll make sure that's still on, which it is. And I will actually change this because I have it set up to go to the custom page. I just want to redirect here. We'll redirect, enable that, go back into Airtable, I'll hit preview, and here's the one that I just created. Let's see if this works. Create customer. It's opened up a new tab for us. And hopefully here, as long as it works correctly, it should redirect us to QuickBooks, which it did, and created the customer there. That's it for this video. There's a lot that you can do with webhooks and webhook responses in both Relay and in make.com as well. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get more tutorials in the future.